I can't stop listening to this record. I really can't. We did Graham Parsons before, but I never dug into the Flying Burrito Brothers until this. Kenny, meet Wayne Fetterman. Wayne Fetterman is my homie. You're just a comic and information guru. And because I don't know enough about the Flying Burrito Brothers, I said hopefully Kenny does. I've got the essentials and shit in front of me, and but I was like, let's bring Wayne on so Wayne can kind of like butter the bread a little bit more. And I know we only got a little bit of time with you. So before we go any further, dude, please promote away. Are you on tour right now? Do you have a new record? What's going on with you, brother?
Yeah, both. So I have a new record out. We did actually a two-part. It's kind of like a double album, but separate releases. So Dirt on My Diamonds. It's kind of wordy, but that's the title. We did Volume One came out in November, and Volume Two September 20th just came out, and pretty pumped about that. So each record has 8 songs, short, sweet, to the point, but there's no filler. It's all killer, no filler, right?
Nice.
And
Nice.
We
and
did that
volume
record.
yeah, volume one got great reviews. Volume two's getting, I think, even better reviews. So for us, like we just wrapped up the Kenny Wayne Shepherd tour for this year, but I jumped on the Experience Hendrix tour, which is like a big tour with all kinds of incredible guitar players and artists, paying tribute to obviously the greatest guitar player of all time, Jimi Hendrix, and it's put on by the Hendrix Estate. And this started many years ago. We basically were doing it for a while there. It was like an every other year tour. Then COVID happened, so it hasn't been on the road for about 5 years. And so we just brought it back. And I'm out here right now doing this for the next month. So this goes through October 19th, and we're having a blast. We did the first show in Seattle, and they actually brought Jimi Hendrix's Stratocaster, the white Strat that he played at Woodstock. They brought it to me on to play on stage that night, which that's the second time I've had the privilege to do that, to play that guitar.
Holy shit, dude. What is there like a nervousness like playing Jimmy's shit in front of his family, in front of like his fans, just the people that idolize him? He's arguably, I mean, I know an inspiration to you and every guitar player out there, but it's like it's got to be the weight of that is just got to be insane.
So, I've been playing Jimi Hendrix's music like since I started my band. Like every show I've ever done, almost since I was 15 years old. Uh, the final song of my set, the encore song, is my version of Jimi Hendrix's Voodoo Child, Slight Return. So, and we've covered Jimi Hendrix songs here and there over the years. So I feel really comfortable playing his music. He's such a huge influence on me and my playing that his kind of musical DNA is firmly integrated into my sound. So I feel pretty comfortable playing his stuff. Now, when you pick up a guitar, an iconic instrument like that, like the actual instrument, and then you're tasked with like playing some of these songs on that instrument, yes, that adds a little more pressure to the situation. But the first time I got was like 14 years ago. They flew the guitars to New York, and I made an appearance on the Jimmy Fallon show when he was still in New York, and I played the guitar on his show, and then I played it later that night at the Beacon Theater, and and then 14 years later they brought it back out again. So, an incredible honor to play that guitar for sure.
Can I ask
Wait,
what song you play on the guitar? Do you do the Voodoo Child or do you do something else?
Well, so 14 years ago, I only saw on the Jimmy Kimmel thing. I can't remember which songs we played on the TV show. It's just kind of like going in and out of commercial breaks.
Hmm.
Um, but that night at the Beacon Theater, so I actually only played it on one song because I was a little nervous, not necessarily about could I play the song, but the guitar, it wasn't set up the way I set my guitars up. And you got to understand, like Jimmy took a right-handed guitar and then flipped it upside down and then strung it left-handed. So it was totally set up almost backwards from how I would normally do it. And none of us were going to take the liberty to change anything about the guitar to make it play better for me. So it
Right.
was a little challenging to play it back then. So I didn't want to be struggling too much or for very long with the instrument. So 14 years ago, I only played one song. The other night, I played like 4 songs on it. I'm like, dude, I'm I'm having this moment. I'm gonna play the crap out of this guitar, and so I played like 4 songs. We started off with Gypsy Eyes. Then we did Come On Part 1, which is an old, it's a cover song that he did that was originally by Earl King. And then we did, what's the next one? I Don't Live Today. And there's one more, but I mean, it was great. And I really put the guitar through its paces for sure.
Can I ask you like a nerdy guitar question about it? When you say set up besides the strings the other way, is it higher? Are there different? Do you use a lighter string than Hendrix did? Like where do you stand on that?
I usually use heavier strings than probably did, and my action is set higher off the neck.
Why is that?
Well, because like when you're playing heavier strings, two things. One is I generally use bigger frets. Like this guitar has the original frets, and back in the 60s and 70s, like the original frets on those guitars were like very, very small. So it's not a lot of meat for you to grip onto the string when you're bending. And the vintage guitars have have a really kind of curved, is 7 1/4 radius. So like, it's not a flat neck. It's more like curved like this. So the strings kind of go like that. And so you're bending against a radius, so there's all these things that are working. So having larger frets and higher action when you're playing heavy strings gives you more of a grip to do what you need to do, right? So this guitar had none of that. Plus, if you know anything about guitar, like, so if I'm playing a guitar, the string closest to my chest would be the low E string. That's the thickest of all the strings, and it goes from thickest all the way down to the thinnest. Well, and so the nut at the top of the guitar that the strings like thread through is slotted appropriately for that. And then you adjust the height of each string based on how far you want it from the pickup, what's comfortable, and the thickness of each string. So in theory, the height of this string is going to be, because it's thicker, you're going to have this saddle up a little bit higher, and the thread in the nut is going to be cut a little wider because the string is much bigger than the one on the bottom. So you have to flip all that backwards if you imagine him doing it this way instead of this way. So that means that all those settings were like the exact opposite of what they should be for a right-handed guitar. And nobody's going to, I'm not going to get an Allen wrench and start like turning wrenches on that guitar because it's not my guitar.
And is it the same string? Like, is it like 8s? Is it 9s? Like, what did he use? What do you use?
I imagine the commonplace back then would have been he was probably playing 9s, maybe 10s. I don't even know like if they had the amount of string gauges available back then that they have today. I mean, now you can get like 10.5s, like between 10s and 11s. So there's a lot more variety now probably than there was then. But I think standard issue on most guitars, you pick them up at a guitar store for the most part throughout history, was probably a 9 gauge or a 10 gauge on an electric guitar.
Wow, they're that thick.
Dude, I want to wait. Hold on. I want to create a theme song for Wayne. Anytime you have like a guitar legend on, like Kenny or Joe. We had Joe Bonamassa on recently. Guitar talk, and then talk. What strings do you use? There's our theme song for it, dude. Ask away, please. I love it. I find this shit because it's like it's so fascinating, when you get two people, especially like the two of you, or when we had Joe on who collects all these guitars, and Wayne is like, you're like a savant in this shit. So I would have never even thought about asking about string. This
Gauge.
Gauge. I'm sorry, Gauge. I don't know.
Yeah, it's Joe's. Yeah, speaking of Joe, man, like incredible player, and like you said, incredible collection. And a lot of guys get to that point, you have a lot of knowledge about what it is that you're working with and what you're collecting and all that stuff. But like, because these are the tools of our trade, it's kind of like I would imagine most race car drivers have a fair amount of understanding about cars.
100%.
And Joe's a great resource.
I had another question about that. Sorry, guitar string gauge. Would you say Stevie Ray Vaughan with his thick strings was like changed that a little bit, that more guitar players were using thicker gauge strings?
Well, I think he made it. I think that I don't know why. I'm sure he's not the first to do that, but like it felt like he was the first one that got widespread like attention for it, like in media, our interviews and stuff. Now, this is back in the days before the internet and stuff like that. So you'd be reading about it in guitar magazines and music magazines and stuff like that. But I just don't know that it was ever such a big conversation before him about people using thicker strings. But he always made it a point to mention that he did it for the tone. It was like everything is in pursuit of a certain sound. When you're a guitar player, everything that you do and every piece of the puzzle, wherever you're at in your journey, it's all about the pursuit of tone and whatever the sound is that you're hearing in your head that you're trying to convey through your instrument. And I went down that same path. Obviously, Stevie was a great starting point for many, many people. So you hear Stevie. I mean, the main thing is that Stevie, at one point was using 13s, which is like, it's massive, right? And especially if you consider that, 9s is where most people play. Even some guys play lighter than that. So he's all the way up at 13s, but like towards the end of his career, I think he was playing like 11s, right? So I went through a similar journey because I thought, let's find out. Like, let's find out what all that meant to him and why he did that. So I went from 9s to 10s and 10s to 11s, 11s to 12s and 12s to 13s and back to 12s. And what I found was, if you really are comparing to my ear, the difference between playing 13s and 12s or 12s and 11s, it's kind of like diminishing returns. So like when you go from 10s to 11s, I hear an obvious difference in the tone. Like, it's like, okay, absolutely, this is worth the effort. But when you go from 11s to 12s or 12s to 13s, it really feels like diminishing returns versus the amount of effort that you're going to have to put in and the wear and tear on your hands. So I settled on 11s myself, just for the most part, because that's, you get the biggest jump in the sound, that what you're looking for from 10s to 11s. And then after that, it just kind of, I don't know, it didn't seem like it made a huge amount of difference. It's just bragging rights. Oh, I'm playing 13s,
Right.
Yeah.
Did you ever have to do like specific exercises to bend those strings to make your left hand stronger, or just like you're not?
No, well, I think just practicing, when I was a kid, I just for hours and hours and hours every day, because I wanted to. So I'd come home from school and, other kids might be running around outside or whatever. I'd be in the house in my room or sitting on the floor in the living room for just till dinner time and after dinner playing guitar. And when you play for that much every day, and then you start working your way up to higher gauges, you just adapt. It's just like going to the gym, and you gradually start lifting heavier and heavier, and your body adapts to it. Your strength builds.
Did you use like a cassette player, a record? Did you slow down solos to try to match them, or you just could hear it naturally?
So at that point, I was using record players, cassettes, and CDs. So the most tedious was cassettes because the way I learned how to play was incredibly tedious, but it worked for me. But I would start, at the beginning of a song, and I would play until I heard the first note or the first chord, and I would stop and I would find that sound on the guitar, and then I would have to rewind back to the beginning. And with cassettes, you can do that thing where like you press play and then you hold down the rewind button just enough that it starts going, but you can hear the sound moving backwards.
Oh, well, yeah.
So when you've gotten back to the beginning of the song, as opposed to you're shooting the mark and then fiddling with it. So anyways, one note, one chord at a time, literally piecing it together like a puzzle. And then what happens is you go, okay, I got the first note, rewind, play, first and second notes, rewind, play, first, second, third notes. And so I'm learning each note as they come, but then I'm also, by repetition, I'm playing the thing from start to finish, every time. So I'm embedding it into my mind, into the muscle memory. And then by the time I make it all the way to the end of the song, it's like I've got it memorized, and then I can play it from start to finish.
God, that's so awesome. God, I wish I spent more time playing guitar instead of fucking just singing to, Guns N' Roses records. God damn it. I want to ask you a question, Kenny. I want to ask you a question because all right, so this is your second time on the podcast. And you came on, and as someone I would call a blues legend as yourself, doing Muddy Waters, live at Newport. I get that 100%. I was actually, I'm not gonna say shocked. I was not shocked that you wanted to do the Flying Burrito Brothers. I'm just so curious because I would never have called this blues like not, I don't want to say like why are you here, but like tell me about like how your love or whatever is it the actual Flying Burrito Brothers, or is it just like Graham Parsons as a whole?
Well, Graham Parsons is a pretty incredible guy, and now, this is not necessarily, to be honest with you, this is not like one of my favorite records at all.
Okay.
But I thought it would be an interesting opportunity to take a little bit of a deep dive into, what some people think is a cult classic, like pivotal album, which was never really intended to be such a pivotal record, but like, it's been credited with all kinds of different, it's allegedly influenced all kinds of different artists from many different genres. But anyway, Graham Parsons, obviously, the guy died when he was 26 years old. You look at people like him, you look at people like Jimi Hendrix, like all the people that died really young. And he's one of those guys that, like, maybe he's not remembered with the likes of Hendrix or at that kind of level. But if you look at his influence at the music he wrote, there's a couple of songs on this record that became cover songs for other artists. A lot of these songs were covered by many, many different artists over the years. And Do Right Woman was a hit for Aretha Franklin. And you listen to this record, like I don't know, man, like this is I guess he used to call this, what did he call it? He called it cosmic American music or something like that. It was like vision for the sound of this band. And even the guys that were in the band with them were like, what the hell does that mean? And to me, I guess listening back to it and kind of refreshing my memory on this record, it was like, I guess it's more like, this is a really traditional country sounding album with the exception of like one or two songs. But the kind of cosmic part of it, I think, is that he wrote these, in some instances, incredibly edgy kind of lyrics, from a more kind of like young hippie kind of perspective. Then so you have this traditional country vibe and sound on 90% of this record, and some incredible slide guitar playing, by the way.
Yeah.
Right? That really, musically, to me, is the most exciting part of the record, is the pedal steel guitar playing. And
Sneaky Pete, yeah,
that guy, wasn't that guy did the isn't he the guy that wrote the theme song for Gumby, like the original Gumby, I think?
Yes. Noteworthy for having composed the Gumby theme song, dude.
Right? Like totally crazy, but like he had an unorthodox style playing, which you hear. It's like he can kind of do all kinds of traditional country stuff, but he also like would interject like I don't know, outside the box ideas, like not your traditional country style of pedal steel playing. So that made it really interesting. There's a couple of songs on there that are like one more towards the end. I think it's Hot Burrito Number 2 or something like that. That sounds a little more like 60s rock. Got blaring like B3 in it. You know, it's, okay, now, yes, we're in 1969 and this is like the sound of a 60s rock band. But most of the record sounds like, two-step country music, like waltzing, beats and things like that. And but it's just remarkable because you listen to it and it's sloppy as all get out, which I think also lends to its like uniqueness, right? Because I'm a big fan of like in modern day, like back then nobody did anything with click tracks and stuff in the studio because you didn't have digital recording tools. But for the most part, it's like, all the old records, people were just playing, together for better or for worse, and time fluctuates and stuff. And so when I hear that at some moments, and I made some notes because I re-listened to the record yesterday, but on certain songs, it's a little bit distracting how out of time the musicians are with one another.
Oh.
But in the moment, I'm going, it catches my attention as a musician because I'm like, wow, these guys are really like not locked in. But then it's like, oh yeah, but you know what? There's something so beautiful about that because so much music today is perfectly in sync because everybody's doing it in Pro Tools that you don't get to hear something like this that much nowadays. That is just naturally fluctuating in and out and around the time, like the time signature of the actual song that they're playing.
I mean, I love that you said that this is not one of your favorite records, but you find it so interesting because that's exactly what I thought. It's like the more I listen to it, the more I actually do like it. The first time I listened to it, I was like questioning. I was like, why is this on the list? And then you start doing the research and you see, just like you said, it's like, dude, this has influenced. I mean, I can see where they would say the Eagles, because I'm pretty sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wayne, is like, didn't Bernie Leiden, didn't he play on this too?
Not on this album, but the next one he did.
Yeah, but he was like in the
yes,
area
he was in the Burritos. Yeah.
It
was a whole move. It was a whole California country movement going on, and Graham was one of the key guys, and along with his writing partner Chris Hillman, who wrote a lot of those songs with him, who's still alive, by the way. And
oh, wow.
and it's I mean, that was his dream. That was his dream. And you know, the crazy thing about Graham Parsons is he's a rich kid. He was a trust fund kid. So he had thousands and thousands of dollars coming in every month to his bank account from his grandfather's estate. And so just an interesting that he would be this like rock and roll guy and go off into this world and have this incredible like love of country music, which happened kind of later in his, we didn't grow up with, he played in like rock bands, and then all of a sudden you hear Merle Haggard, and next thing you know, he has this vision for cosmic American music. Again, whatever that means.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a perfect way to sum up this shit. I mean, he went to Harvard.
Why wouldn't you just call it country rock?
Well, because I don't, all right. So from digging into this podcast, like when I think of like would you call this record like the Bakersfield sound? Would you call this like outlaw at all? Or it's like, because it's like to me, it's like when I'm thinking of like the beginning of the country that we listen to on this, like you mentioned Merle Haggard, we've done, who else have we done? Waylon Jennings. And I mean, would this be lumped in with that?
No, because it's done by hippies. That was the whole point of it. It was like go ahead. Lyrically, there was definitely like there's some edgy lyrics, right? Like you start. I can't quote a lot of these lyrics, but as I was listening, I was reading along with the lyrics and stuff, and I'm like, there's like lyrics about like pill bottles, and alcohol and LSD. Like the last song, that whole story that he tells, he's talking about tripping on LSD. So like that's pretty edgy stuff for a country. Like
yeah.
This is a country record. You go, wow, this has all the musical elements, most of this, of a really traditional country album. Then you got this guy talking about like some pretty far out stuff. That's where the young hippie side of him kind of came into it. I think that's where he thought he was cosmically like bridging, the gap between genres and stuff like that. But outlaw country music is more like, to me, it's like, the badass, kind of mentality of, hell raising and stuff like that from like, from a country perspective, which lyrically this isn't necessarily, but I could see how maybe you might draw some parallels to some of that because a lot of these lyrics are pretty edgy for what sounds like traditional country music.
Can I ask you a question, Kenny? I know we're talking about lyrics, and I know like there used to be that show, I think it was on HBO, Mike Judge had done it, and it was where he talked to, it was either funk singers, funk rock and rollers, and country artists. These 2 seasons where it's like the craziest tour stories, and then he would animate them. and it was
Oh,
from
yeah.
some of the greats. And he did the country guys. I can imagine that the blues guys have stories. Is there anyone that you remember somebody telling you that you feel okay talking about, that's kind of maybe public knowledge, that it wouldn't be like, you know, if you dropped it or you'd be pissing anybody off? Did you anybody tell you a story that just blew your mind?
There's plenty of stories. Most of those things are like, you know, we come from the age of pre-internet and pre-cell phone camera and all
Yeah.
that stuff. Like when you'd have crazy experiences on the road, it's kind of like, you know, the what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas thing. That was kind of the mentality. But when guys share stories like that, generally it's not for public consumption. But yeah, there's a lot of stories. I mean, a lot of stories. BB King, I've shared this already. So, but BB King shared with me actually when I was 16 years old. It was my 16th birthday. I did 3 concerts opening for BB King. It was the first time I was 15 when the tour started, and I was 16 on the show. And it was my birthday, and so he sent his people to come get me, and he said, Mr. King wants to see you. And I said, okay. And it was after his show. And so I'm standing outside the door, and they're like, well, no, you can go ahead and go in. And so I opened the door, and he's standing there like getting undressed. So he's standing there like in his underwear. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. And he goes, no, son, come on in, have a seat. You're one of the guys now. You're one of us, you know, and have a seat. And so we sat down. And he started talking to me, and he was giving me all kinds of advice, but like it wasn't musical advice. It was more or less like fatherly advice, but it was about life as a musician and being on the road. But it wasn't like you should play this and don't play that, and you know, sound like this and be it. No, it was like the most memorable part of the whole conversation was he recounted a story. He just basically said, let me give you one piece of advice, son. He said, don't ever go home with a woman that you don't know. And I was like, okay, I'm 16. I'm like, well, what does that mean? And so he was like, well, I went home, and he said, I played a gig, and I met this fine young lady, beautiful, beautiful lady, and she invited me over to her house after the concert. So, you know, I asked her, I'm like, do you have a boyfriend? Or are you married or anything? She told me no. So I went over to her house, and one thing led to another, and you know, we're laying there after the fact, and you know, I'm in her bed, and all of a sudden her husband comes home, and she had lied to him. You know, she had totally misled him, and he didn't know anything about this woman. He just took her word for it. And her husband showed up, and he literally said that he jumped out the window in his underwear, left all of his clothes behind, was running down the street in the middle of the night, and of course a cop was driving up, and so the cop stops him and is like, what are you doing, like running basically naked down the road? And he said the cop had mercy on him. He explained the situation, told him he was, you know, who he was and what had happened, and the cop thankfully had mercy on him. But he was like, after that, he said, I learned my lesson. He's like, if you meet a lady and you want to spend some time with her, you bring her back to your place. You don't go to like down the road in the middle of the night in his underwear, you know, and you come up on BB King, like,
oh my God, it's BB King. It's BB King live in Cook County Prison. I love that record.
He learned, I guess he learned a valuable lesson that night, and
I love it.
A guy that like it seemed like he didn't have to learn a lesson like that more than once for it to sink in, you know.
I think, like, you know, I know Graham, like you were talking, he comes from this, you know, very affluent world, but what you think he was just like one of those people that are just fascinated by, you know, because I mean, look, Christine's tune is written about one of the LA Zappa groupies, so obviously there's that. What I don't want to call it, what, counterculture? Yeah, I guess it is. It's just like he's fighting against his upbringing, Wayne, or
well, there's no better example than the cover of this album, where the guys are all in these
nudie suits,
embroidered, the nudie embroidered suits, but it's marijuana, it's drugs, it's that kind of stuff on there, which, so they're taking the country aesthetic and they're moving it into the hippie counterculture. It's like it's right there on the cover, and then I think the lyrics reflect that. I think the lyrics reflect that as well. By the way, I feel like that song really is the song, because if you listen to it, there's like that pedal steely guitar during it, and then the solo in Christine's whatever time or whatever it's called tune is
is like a full-on fuzz guitar, like
Yeah.
60s, right in the middle of it, and then back to like the country. So it's, you can actually, the fusion is there in that song. I think if you want to hear like what his and Chris Hillman's vision of for this new hybrid music, right?
What? Well, now to both you guys, I mean, if either of you know, I mean, if you are a, if you are a country purist, like this is, because you were talking about it, Kenny, where you mentioned it was like, they didn't have these kind of lyrics in country music. Country music, to my interpretation of what I always thought, besides the Outlaw guys, were really, it was about, like good, clean living, Christian values, that kind of shit. To a point, I mean, I know Outlaw wasn't that at all, but
or there was alcohol and stuff like tear in my beer and stuff like that. But but yes, there was. You didn't hear Hank Williams Sr. You were never going to hear him sing about LSD and
exactly.
Even though, who knows, maybe he was actually doing that, but he wasn't going to be singing about it.
Yeah, was that well? So then, when I guess I'm taking this back. Also, I guess where the Outlaw was because there's no this without the guys that were before him, like like we talked about, like Merle and all those guys. Was there like a reaction from the country community when these guys came out of like what the fuck? What in tarnation? How could someone take our music? And am I right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a classic example of, he tried to do this with the Byrds beforehand. Graham was like not the lead singer, but with Roger McGuinn and this guy Chris Hellman, they did this album called Sweetheart of the Radio, which was a country, kind of the first. The Byrds are a huge rock band, and they did this country, recorded it in Nashville, and then played the Grand Ole Opry, and were basically heckled off the stage. Like they were not having. Oh yeah. Oh, it's legendary. It's legendary. Yeah. And so, but it didn't deter him. He was like, I think there's something here. Cut to, the Eagles playing stadiums. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
This album, I don't think was that successful when it first came out.
It was not. It still isn't.
Yeah.
Dude, it's. Good.
Yeah, I mean, they, like we talked about before, it's credited with, like so many different things and artists spawning off of the influence of this album. So it was, I guess it was just ahead of its time,
Oh, I listen, I one of the things I like that fascinates me is when, I don't believe in lists. I don't believe in numbers. The list that we're using is just a way to listen to music. But when you start really digging in to why is this ahead of this and how is this lower than that, there is a reason for this album and to be, because not only is this on the 2012 list, on the 2020 and the 2023 list that Rolling Stone put out. I'm trying to find it, but it's dude, it's like it's stuck around. It's obviously, and it's like you said earlier, when there's so many others records that just like fall off the list because the old white executives built the early Rolling Stone magazine list. The 2020 list was a diverse group of voters. So for this to still be on there, like this is crazy. And dude, from what my understanding, it only sold 50,000 copies in total. It's kind of, what this is? I read somewhere that this is the Velvet Underground, that it sold 30,000 albums, but all 30,000 people that bought this went on to start a band. You can hear the influences.
But just look at the cover song, like the other artists, how many artists covered songs from this record and ended up and in particular R&B artists, which is fascinating, right? That covered songs like Aretha Franklin, which we mentioned before with the dude, right? But then I wrote it down. Dark End of the Street, right? Dark End of the Street was covered by Percy Sledge, James Carr, right? Which their versions were almost identical. But I mean, you had R&B artists listening to this record, or somebody in their organization saying, hey, you should cover this song, and like doing a completely different version than what you hear here, and then being successful with those songs. So it's like, the way success works in the entertainment industry is so unbelievably strange, because I was sharing with somebody the other day. It's like everybody, first of all, when I go into a casino, I don't really gamble. I'm not a gambler because I feel like I don't buy lottery tickets personally, because I feel like I already won the lottery. Because if you look at the amount of people that would love to have a career in music versus the ones
100%.
that it's like the 1% of the 1%, and then the ones that like you get a shot and you're lucky if you get 5 years out of it, much less like 3 decades is what I'm going on. And so it's like I'm just like, I've won, so I don't feel like I'm going to walk into the casino and win a bunch of money. But when you look at the way things have to happen, it's not just like, do you have a great record? It's not like, do you have a hit song? Because that's just one piece of the puzzle. First, you have to write a great song. Then you have to record a great version of it on a great record. But then you have to hand it in to the right group of people. And every single person that's a part of that little machine that has all their different jobs to do, from marketing to promotion, getting it on the radio back in the day when that was a thing, and everything, everybody has to execute their job and do it to the best of their ability for it to even get a shot and have a chance, right? And so if any one of those important parts fails to execute, or doesn't get the right break, or doesn't get, shake the right hand or whatever, you can sell 50,000 copies and that's it. And then Aretha Franklin covers the song and has a hit with it. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that the song wasn't great. It just meant that we didn't have the right team, the right place, and the right opportunities at the right time. And it's not for lack of talent.
Fuck, dude. No, I completely agree with you. I mean, why didn't this sell, Wayne? Why is this record like I'm saying, like I said about the Velvet Underground, where it did not do better? Because obviously he had Graham had all of the Rolling Stones loved him. Like I read that Keith Richards' girlfriend had kicked him out off the tour because he was writing so much music and ignoring Mick Jagger. Like there
definitely was a bromance between those guys. I was a young kid when this album came out. It never hit my radar, but again, this is late 60s. I am way more into like guitar rock. Like I was into Hendrix and Cream, and then the next year Zeppelin and all of that, and then right on their tails Leonard Skinner. So why would I want to listen to a country record like I had never heard of Graham Parsons until he died, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Until that crazy story about his death, I had never heard of the guy.
We had done one of his records before on this podcast, and it's like, it stuck with me. I was like, oh, I dig this. I think this was the first one we did during the pandemic. But this record, this is something that after the first listen, I was driving to a show in Long Island and I was like, this is pretty good. The last few days of listening to this, I fell in love. I would put this in probably my top 10 records that I've heard from since I started. Yeah, I really liked this album. I really did. But also like my love for country music has gotten bigger with, doing the podcast, going on tour with Jelly Roll, like working with Ashley McBride and Struggle and all the people that I met while on tour. There's something about I could see how the Eagles became the biggest band, in America at one point, but I can see, this is what blows my mind is that was it just America was ready for Eagles and not ready for the Flying Burrito Brothers? Is it the name? Like, what is it that held this band back? But if the critics loved it, then shouldn't this have gotten more? Because like you said, dude, Kenny, like you said, dude, these songs, the song that you mentioned that Aretha Franklin did, Do Right Woman, I mean, that is like, I do not to be like lame, but I was like petting my dog, who's a girl, and she's like 7, and I'm like, I'm going to lose her one day, and I'm listening to this song, and I'm just like tearing up. I mean, it's a gorgeous song. This album is incredible. So why is it not bigger?
Well, can I just say that, like, every artist, I don't care, unless you go back to the very origins of instruments, right? But like every artist has someone that they were influenced by, right? Someone they looked up to, someone that inspired them, and you always start your musical journey by learning how to play their music and emulating kind of like what that artist does, and then eventually, then it's a group of different artists and you're learning all their stuff, and eventually you take all that and you try to turn it into your own thing, right? But like, if you look at history, I mean, there is so many artists that I heard a guy the other day. It's unfortunate I can't think of his name, but I heard this guy, man, singing that I never really, I'm sure I heard him before, but like I never really paid much attention to him. And I was like, who is it? Because it sounded exactly like Chris Robinson from the Black Crowes. I mean, identical. I'm like, bro, Chris Robinson straight up, I guarantee you he loved this guy, man. I guarantee you he listened to everything this guy did. And he was like, grew up singing to this guy's stuff. But Chris Robinson, I didn't even know who this other guy was necessarily. But Chris Robinson and the Black Crowes brought that guy's vocal delivery sound to the masses. So it's like, you keep making the Eagles comparison, but it's like, let's just start with the name of the band, bro. Like the Flying Burrito.
Yeah, like, it's hard to dig into that.
How many people are going to wear that T-shirt? How many people are going to explain to all their friends? So like, first of all, the package was wrong. Like the name was like, they must have been tripping one day or just super.
Yeah.
Somebody put that out and they all had a laugh, and that became the name of the band, unfortunately. But like, package is one thing. And then it's like, the Eagles, a lot of it is the harmonies, like, right? So you go, okay, well, we have a country sound. We have 2-part harmonies for this band. The Eagles have 3-part and sometimes more than that. But yeah, that goes back to the Everly Brothers and stuff like that, know, and which sure played a role in all of the Eagles music and this record. But sometimes like, okay, well, these guys have a nice recipe, but who can put it in a better package, a more palatable, more marketable package? And if you look at the Eagles versus these guys, I'm just gonna say the Eagles like had a more palatable package. Plus,
for sure,
incredible songwriters and singers and performers. Every one of those guys had an incredible solo career, which speaks to the extreme talent of every member of that band.
Yeah, and you talked about the harmonies on the song that I love, "Do Right Woman." David Crosby is one of the background singers in that. It's beautiful. Like it's. I think I'm not to be like, oh, I'm putting that in my. It's definitely in my top 20 songs that I think I've heard since doing this podcast. He dies at what, 26?
Mm-hmm.
Graham Parsons dies at 26, and I know there's a crazy story about him. I mean, just throwing it out there, if he doesn't pass when he does, are we putting him up there with some of the greatest songwriters in American history? Are we putting this guy way bigger? Is this album, because of the other albums that he creates that sell, let's say, millions, because he's working with Eagles, he's working with Travis Tritt and Randy Travis, and he's working with what's her name? Oh fuck, what is her fucking name?
Emmylou Harris.
Emmylou Harris, or Lucinda Williams. Like, he's just working. Dwight Yoakam. I mean, all of these. Fucking Wilco. You could take it to the alt country scene. Uncle Tupelo, Sunvolt, like Jayhawks, like Steve Earle, because Elvis Costello has said this is one of his favorite records. So, I mean, if he doesn't die, are we, is this a guy that you think we're talking about could have made some of the most impactful music, not just on this list, but in rock country
history? Are you asking me? I mean, I think
both you guys, yeah.
It's interesting. I had this conversation the other day. We were talking about Jimi Hendrix because we're on this tour, and it's like, well, what if Jimi Hendrix was still alive today? Like, part of being, everybody says greatest guitar player of all time, and I think it's indisputable. Like, he's been voted the greatest of all time so many times. It's
for sure.
Like this, it's the Michael Jordan of guitar. But you go, okay, and you look at the amount of music that he created, his contribution up to the point that he died when I think it was 27. And how far the reach is, and you go, man, what? But think about if he'd have been around, all this time, what he could have done. But the challenge with that is, and I'm not saying he couldn't have done it. I believe if anybody could have done it, it would be Hendrix. But like, the challenge is when you're around for decades and decades and decades, and you're seen as such a revolutionary artist, it's like, how do you continue that for so long? How do you stay relevant through the drastic pendulum swings of what's popular in the music industry? It's like, how does Jimi Hendrix, survive the disco era, and then the 80s electronic era, and then the 90s grunge, thing, and all of that? It's like, that's the challenge when you live longer. But it's so impressive when you look at guys like Hendrix and you look at Parsons. I mean, for a small window of time that they were able to be productive, and what they did create in that amount of time, and the tentacles that it has even to this day, and the how far the reach is just incredible. And I think the guy absolutely Parsons deserves a tremendous amount of credit for the influence that what he's written and recorded has had on many, many different genres over time.
Is he in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I'm looking right now. I don't see it. I do have Rolling Stone ranked him as number 87 on the 100 greatest artists of all time. Oh, he did win the President's Award, the Americana Music Association. I don't see anything about.
He's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
No, he's not. I love that you said that with Jimmy. That's another thing I always like to ask. I always say we love Nirvana so much because Nevermind is brilliant, and Bleach is great. I mean, incredible. And In Utero was an incredible record. And I think it's as over the years, it's definitely gotten the credit it deserves. But it's like, what would Nirvana have done? You know what I mean? Those are like, we got such a small little taste. And then sometimes these people live long, and I'm not gonna say it hurts, but it just, the output declines. And it's like you said, it's hard to stay relevant for fucking, Lou Reed, Iggy Pop. I mean, some of these great rock stars that were like the hottest thing and then go down. It's hard to be David Bowie and just constantly be changing music. I mean, I feel like a lot of the blues guys though have always, because blues is such a genre that is loved by the people that love it, that it's like, it doesn't, like, there's people that I've never heard of that can sell out the Beacon Theater right now, and it's crazy. So so I completely agree with that.
That's one of the reasons I'm very, very it wasn't intentional. Like, I chose my musical path because of the music that I felt inspired me, and it just happened to be a lot of that was blues, and a lot of it was heavily blues influenced rock music, which, in my lifetime has never been the most popular thing to do. It's never been pop music, so it's never actually gone out of style because it was never the most popular thing. So it's with me, I think, that I would have been chasing a pop music career, like, there's people, I mean, you look at, like, I don't know, there's big names, that do it. I mean, there's like U2, and there's, Madonna, and like, there are the big names, but like, for the majority of the people that are chasing a pop career, you're a flash in the pan, and you're a distant memory very quickly. And so I built a 3-decade-long career because I chose a genre of music that wasn't chasing the sound of the time, And so I think Hendrix and artists like that, yes, he would have had more probability of being able to continue staying relevant just because of what his music was firmly rooted in. But, times change and stuff like that. And it's just like Nirvana is actually really interesting. I guess the goal for bands like that is, like, you look at Metallica, right? Like, Metallica, they're still doing it. They're still playing songs, and I think they still put out the occasional new music. But, they've got the catalog of what were super hot and new and on the scene and productive. And that's the stuff. I mean, they could just never record another new song. It's like the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles go out and they're playing those. It's the greatest hits tour.
Dude, I saw Eagles, Kenny. I saw Eagles, and I'm not that big a fan of them. And literally the whole show, I was like, I know that song. Oh my god, I love this song. I know that one.
Tell you what, bro, it's like, it's unbelievable. Like, when you go and as an artist, like, I've had some good success at radio, and Blue on Black was a massive hit, continues to be a massive hit. But let me tell you what, bro, when you go see guys like that, and I'm talking like there's not a lot of them, but the Eagles are one of them, and it's like every single song, and you're just like, how is this even possible? Like, how is it? I did a gig with oh my gosh, the guy, REO Speedwagon, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I'm looking at those songs, and we're playing these songs in the Jim Irsay band, and we're playing these REO Speedwagon songs, and the singer had come up, and which he's incredible, man. He just still sings the hell out of those songs. And he came up, and I looked at him, and I said, dude, and I had to learn all these songs, and I looked at the writing credits, and like he wrote all these songs. I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, I know every one of these songs. I heard them a million times growing up. It's like incredibly prolific writing and massive hits and like songs that everybody knows the words to, and and it's just like, it's incredible when you meet somebody like that has the ability to write that many hit songs, radio hits. It's just mind blowing, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I know you got to get out of here soon. Wayne, is there anything you want to ask Kenny real quick before we?
No, I think I'm going to try to go to Anaheim and see your Hendrix show on next Tuesday.
Dude, wait, fuck! I would go to that in a second, dude. Oh man, are you coming to New York?
This one's not coming to New York, but I think they're talking about doing another leg of this tour next spring. So maybe that one will.
Okay, I'm 100%. All right, let's. I'll give you. Because we have 3 minutes, or you have to get out at 2:55. So I'm going to ask you the questions, and then me and Wayne. Well, I'm going to ask you a few things after when he's got to take off. So, Kenny, all right, what's your favorite song on this record?
The Gilded Palace of Sin.
Well, for me, I want to say, I mean, the predictable thing would be Do Right, because I'm more attached to the Aretha Franklin version.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll say this, hold on a minute, because I made a note. Oh, yeah. So the Hot Burrito #2 song, right? Which is kind of weird. It's like you got Hot Burrito #1, then you got Hot Burrito #2, and obviously that it must be lyrically an extension. One song kind of leads to the next. But the cool thing about that is that it had this massive, like, that one has the B3 really hot in the mix. And I think it's the first time in the whole album that you hear a B3 introduced, an organ introduced to the sonic sound of the record. And it's super hot, super like 60s rock and roll. And then there's this crazy fuzzy guitar line that plays towards the end, which is like another like, oh wow, these guys are like really like trying to take this whole country thing and bring some really outside the box ideas to it. It's a bizarre song. It's not lyrically, but musically I enjoyed the elements. And then there's one other one, I can't remember the name of it, but like it's towards the end, and like and then it's like sounds like a really traditional country kind of ballad, and then all of a sudden it goes to like a blues shuffle, like right in the middle of the song.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes blues.
I think that's hip. Yeah, that might be Hippie Boy. Yeah, I think they do that.
Yeah, they do. It's Hippie Boy. Is there anything you skip over on this record? His least favorite song? I feel like it was just. I mean, there's nothing that really turned me off. For you?
I want to say that actually that's the Hippie Boy thing, because it's just like, I don't know. It seems like a really bizarre story.
No, dig it.
And I like that, like, so like that's kind of a spin on. There's a lot of old country songs that like start that way, where like the guy's doing spoken word and he's telling a story.
Oh, that's right.
They launch into a song, but like he never launches into a song. He just tells like.
I know at the end it goes gospel also, right? It's like
Well, yeah, but it's some sort of like popular hippie song for people to sing back then. I can't remember which one it was, but yes. But it's just like weird to me that. If somebody's telling me a story, I got to feel like I can relate to the story, but I didn't feel like I was able to fully even comprehend what the story. I felt like I needed to be high on something, which I'm 21 years old. So, I felt like on his level. So I had no idea. It was like talking to a drunk person at the bar. And it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. But for me, that's what.
Yeah. All right. Can you fuck to this record? I think you can. I think this is, if there's going to be a country record that you can make love to, I think this is it. Why not?
Oh, dude, there's way better country records to make love to than this one. But I will say this would be a great album to put on at a dinner party to like really get people's attention, like just a conversation.
100%.
Because
100%.
what is this? And then you can go, well, I mean, just the name. Oh, it's the Flying Burrito Brothers. It'd be like,
Yeah.
But then you
This
tell them how
Yeah.
far, how broad the reach is of the influence of this record. It's a good conversation piece.
There's that scene in High Fidelity where he's like, I'm gonna sell 5 copies of the Beta Boys, whatever, and he puts on the record, and just one by one people come up and go, what is that? This is that kind of record. This is a record that I don't think anybody's gonna know if you put it on, the majority, but also they'll be like, what is like this? It's sonically, musically, this is a damn near perfect record. What would be, because I know you got to go, last thing was, what would be your elevator pitch to get someone to listen to this record? How would you explain to somebody that doesn't know who they are, doesn't know the music, but is like maybe curious? What would you say to them?
Well, it's just like, if you were going to spend the next, I don't know how long this record is, total listening time, but let's just say it's 45 minutes. Do you want to spend the next 45 minutes listening to something that's background noise, or do you want to listen to something that's really going to make you like think and like analyze and go, wow, why did they do that? What is he trying to, you know what I mean? Do you want background noise, or do you want something that's really going to get your attention and make you think? And that's what this record's going to do. And I feel like my time is better spent being challenged,
Sure. Dude, I couldn't agree with you more. I think this record is like, I get it. I think, especially after this discussion, and it just makes me realize why this record is on this list and super important. And I mean, I'm not only just going to keep listening to this album, but I think I'm going to try to dig into more shit, Graham. Kenny, thank you so much for coming on, dude. I know you got to get out of here, dude. I want to see you live, so please let's stay in touch so I can fucking party with you one day. And if you're ever, are you in Nashville? When I say party, I mean rock out. I don't party like that either. I meant like, I didn't mean like, all right, we're gonna get a bag of fucking blow.
Come see me in Nashville, or come see us anywhere on the road, man. Anytime, open invitation.
All right, dude, definitely, dude. All right, thank you so much for coming on, brother. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Nice
guys.
seeing you again.
All right, seeing you, dude. So when I asked you about this, like you're just like on the fence about this band. Is that it, or
Again, because this is not a record that I had as a kid. None of my friends listened to this record. It wasn't even on, as they like to say, it wasn't on my radar. I didn't know about Graham Parsons until that insane story of his death. And then he became this legend, and that continues to this day. And you asked the great question, like, what would he have been like? Like, there's people like Bernie Ledden from started the Eagles, or was one of the original members of the Eagles, and then obviously Emmylou Harris, he did that great album with. She becomes this country music icon, and then he. I don't know. He kind of reminds me a little of Harry, not Harry Neal. Is it Harry Nielsen? Is that his name?
the coconut guy?
Yeah. No. Yeah. Nielsen. Yeah.
A lot of coconut.
No. I can't live with living as without you. Yeah, I think it is Harry Nielsen. Anyway, it's like that. It's like one of these guys that dies young, and then that kind of elevates his contribution. But when I look back, I really like his voice. I just love the guy. And it's just too bad. He was a crazy drug addict, this dude. Crazy.
Yeah. It's so crazy. He went to Harvard.
Yeah.
He's got 30,000 a year, basically, and this is in whatever the 1969. So
right.
that's the equivalent of 210,000.
Yeah, I've read a number of different numbers about how much he was making and stuff from that trust fund. But he was a trust fund kid, and he just looked great. He had the hair. He was tall, and he could sing. And he was great with doing harmonies with people. Obviously, with Emmylou Harris and his buddy Chris Hillman. Those are great Everly Brothers harmonies. I love that Kenny Wayne Shepherd brought up The Everly Brothers. Like that was the sound of those guys.
So we did Grievous. Grievous, is it Grievous Angel? Is that the word? And
Oh,
he
yeah, the
died
later
4
one. Yeah,
months.
yeah.
Yeah, 4 months morphine and alcohol overdose in 73.
Right.
And this came out. That album came out in 73. And I mean, a lot of Emmylou Harris on it.
Yeah. Did you
I
do
really
the story? Did you do the story of him dying and then?
no, let's talk about that, because so if anybody doesn't
Oh
know
my
about
God.
it, I kind of know, but Wayne,
This is
take
one of
us
the
there.
great. Well, he goes out to Joshua Tree, right? With his not
As
with
we
his
do.
wife, but with his girlfriend, and gets crazy drunk at this bar that's still there, and then shoots morphine, and then shoots some more morphine, and basically overdoses. Has I think is a heart attack, and he just can't handle it, so he dies out there. And he had gone to the funeral of another guitar player, Chris somebody, and he was like very disappointed in the ceremony of this guitar player. So he said to his road manager, this guy Phil Kaufman, if I ever die, just take my remains out to Joshua Tree, like the most beautiful place here in California, in this national park, and set me on fire and let me just go up to the heavens. Like, and so okay, this is the insane part. So he dies, of course, of this morphine. They put him, they bring him back. His stepfather wants to fly the body to Louisiana, to Metairie, Louisiana, on a private jet, right? Because the stepfather mistakenly thought that if the body of Graham Parsons was in Louisiana, that he would be able to get his inheritance because the body was in Louisiana. This was not correct, but that's what he thought. But Phil Kaufman like rents a hearse or borrows a hearse and gets a buddy, drives out to Van Nuys Airport where the casket is waiting to get on a private jet to go to Louisiana, somehow cons the security guard into signing over the body to him, like he's the mortuary guy or the undertaker, puts it in the car, and they drive out to Joshua Tree with the body of Graham Parsons stolen, and put him out there, pour 5 gallons of gasoline over the casket, throw a match on it, goes up, they go away. Of course, campers nearby are like, what is going on with this fireball?
It smells like chicken.
Yes. So they call the police. They put out the fire. The remains are still there, bare, charred. The body does go back to Metairie, believe it or not, Louisiana, even in that charred thing. The guy does not get the inheritance. It goes to his wife. And Phil Kaufman ends up getting arrested, doesn't go to jail for it, but gets fined for body snatching, basically. And so the legend of this, of him wanting to be out in Joshua Tree, dying of a heroin overdose, having the body stolen, was national news story. This is the first time I ever heard the name Graham Parsons in my life. And that became part of his, and then people started re-examining the Burrito Brothers, what he did with the Byrds, what that the other band he had right after college, the International, whatever that thing was called. And then obviously his work with his solo albums with Emmylou Harris. And then he became this sort of, 2 months away from being part of the 27-year-old club, and became this legendary guy. So how crazy is that story, though?
I mean, it's kind of awesome, actually. That I love the roadie. I love that the roadie. Yeah, dude. I mean, that's like
I think they made a pact. Like they made a pact when they went to this guy Chris's funeral. Like, I don't want this kind of like traditional Catholic ceremony. I don't want it. And so Bill was like, "Look, I made a promise to the guy." Cut to signing over the body to him.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's it's definitely it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah.
There's no
So
other
that's
way to
part
put
of
it.
the legend. That's part of the legend of Graham Parsons. Besides all this great music he wrote in his harmonies and all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, so
Yeah.
do you want to know my
Um,
favorite song off this album?
yeah. Let's wrap this up. Let's get you.
Yeah.
What's your favorite stuff? What do you got?
It's really interesting. First of all, I made a mistake. It was not Hippie Boy that has that Texas shuffle in it. I don't know why
Oh,
I said that
no.
like a moron. But I like Hot Burrito #1, not #2. We're both those are yeah. I like Hot
Really?
Burrito. The least country song I believe on the album. It is like just a pop. The vocals are staggeringly they're just achingly heartfelt. They're incredible. I just love the bass playing on the song, the whole song. I feel like it's the least country of all the songs on there. It's called Hot
Yeah.
Burrito #1. Don't get it mixed up with Hot Burrito #2.
I'm
not.
not. Don't
That's
worry.
that's the Kenny Wayne Shepherd. I do like that song too, but I like Hot Burrito #1. That's my favorite one.
I hands down Do Right Woman. That song I was today. It just I had heard it a few times, but then today I had that moment with the dog.
I know, but let me tell you what.
Over
I
there.
do like Do Right Woman,
Blackout.
and it's great, but
here.
that's not. He didn't write that. Parsons. Oh, I see the dog.
Blackout,
Parsons
come here.
didn't write that
Come here.
song.
Come here,
That's a
sit.
cover song.
I understand that, but that doesn't mean what the fuck, Blackout. It doesn't mean that I don't love it. It's not about the writing of it. It's just about that's the one that I like.
I got it. There's no right or wrong. This is totally subjective, completely subjective. What people like.
Yeah, but I mean, I really did enjoy this record. I think I'm excited that I don't have to tape. We've done 3 podcasts in a row. We did I did Green Day on Monday with Jordan Jensen, Green Day Dookie. Yeah, that was super fun. Then we did Greg Fitzsimmons and I did the Stooges Funhouse, which was great. You know, fucking in your face, kick you in the dick music, and then to end it with this. Because, dude, you made me because I reached out to you about doing this because I knew you loved Kenny, and I was like, I was like, this guy, he'll talk 45 minutes about the thickness of guitar strings, and I'll just sit here with my thumb up my ass.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
It was awesome. I love you. I love you to death. I want to start having like you certain ones. I'm gonna have you sit in. I'm gonna have Morty on some of them. When it's like if I have a guest, like I'm just like, all right, this will work. I'll be here. I can be me.
This is what's surprising to me about this is how much you connected to this album, because I would have thought I always think of you as a little more
rocky,
edgy. Yeah, rock, edgy. Hard.
Dude, I love face. You know what? I can tell you what my favorite song in the history of music is. It's Stardust by Nat King Cole.
Well,
that version. But also I'll take the Willie Nelson version.
Yes,
I love that. We did that, didn't we?
No, I don't think so.
Are you sure?
Maybe we did. Maybe I do love
you
that
wanted
album.
it. You wanted to do it, and Adam.
Yeah, you might be right
now. Adam, pop your little fucking face up in this live stream so I can see your beautiful Uncle Tupelo. How you doing? It's me, Adam. I'm Adam. I'm in the comic book store. I got 9 kids. They're running around. I got one by my leg. I've seen Pearl Jam 45 times.
And also, I've never been a comic book person. I'm a sports person. I've never been a comic
That's what
person.
I meant, you fucking mook. It's all, you look like you're in a comic book store. You look like you have behind you. You look like you have the Back to the Future sports almanac behind your head, doesn't it? Like
a little bit.
I went back in time and I voted on the Florida Marlins to win the World Series in 2003. And I'm
that was a tough one. I was a Yankee fan. All right. So Wayne has done Steve Miller Band's Fly Like an Eagle. Let's see.
I remember that one. That was live in my apartment. Dude, you were afraid of my dog.
The Yardbirds having a rave up. The Yardbirds, aka Roger the Engineer.
Yep.
Buddy Waters at Newport, 1960 was Kenny Wayne Shepherd. The Sun Records collection. Velvet
Yep.
Underground, White Light, White Heat.
Yeah.
Smokey Robinson and the Miracles going to a go-go.
Hey,
Crosby, Stills, and
wait, hold on a second. But it's
What?
Smokey.
Oh yeah, but it's Smokey.
I apologize.
Keep going,
Smokey.
keep going. Yeah,
Smokey.
Smokey. Yeah.
And
keep going.
Crosby, Stills, and Nash self-titled. Then Jerry
Yeah.
Lee Lewis, Old Killer, No Filler. The anthology. Professor Longhair's New Orleans Piano. Bobby
my
Blue Bland's Two Steps
Bobby
from
Blue
the Blues. And Cream's Wheel of Fire. And then, John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. And here we are today.
Oh my God, you can come on for every single one of them, dude.
No.
No, you know what?
So the whole point of that was you claimed I did Stardust. I didn't.
Oh, I
think
could have sworn you did that. Okay, yeah.
I think I wanted to. I think I wanted.
Who did do that? Who did do that?
Waylon Nelson.
Who?
Willie Nelson.
Willie Nelson's granddaughter.
Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry,
Oh,
dude.
yeah.
I
That's-
mean-
of course, that album is incredible. By the way, Stardust might be my favorite song of all time.
Ah!
Might be, I know that sounds crazy, but yeah, Hoagie Carmichael, by the way, is the guy who wrote it.
What's song number 2? I can tell you what my second song is.
Oh my god,
Claire de Lune by Claude Debussy.
yeah, that's a good one.
I love that so much.
I don't know, probably Spiders and Snakes by I can't remember the guy who did that. Anyway, that was
Hold on,
just
but
an
do you want to know?
obscure
Do you want to know what my
obscure 70s song.
my third favorite song is?
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me just. It's by Cannibal Corpse. It's called "I Come Blood."
Right. Yeah. That's
It's a real song, dude.
interesting.
That's a real song,
yeah.
by the way.
Yeah, interesting. Same themes as Stardust. Same exact theme.
You didn't comment about my hair. You like it?
Yeah. Of course. That is exactly
love
what
it.
Hoagie Carmichael was thinking when he wrote that song.
Hoagie. All right, what were we talking about? No, you know what it
No,
is.
so that
and
was my favorite song. No,
Yeah.
I was surprised that it connected with you. That's all.
It's dude, I'm like my dad. My dad was very big in, not big, but I mean, he loved melodies, and
Mhm.
he just loved very pretty music. He loved, like, the Four Freshmen, and his favorite jazz was like the modal stuff, the very slow, and he loved Oscar Peterson Trio and Joe Pass.
Got it.
He loved all that. And it's just, I guess, just growing up, the melody is the most important part. I think that's kind of what gets into your soul,
Yep.
and you just
That's right. Please listen to Hot Burrito #1 one more time. Just let it sink in. It's incredible.
okay. Oh, dude, I'm gonna listen to this record because I don't have another podcast taping until I think we do Elvis, which will be when I get back from.
Wait, Elvis, the first album from '56, or Elvis? just
what? No. What is it, Adam?
It is number 189. Elvis Presley from Elvis in Memphis.
Oh, that one. Yeah, that was a crazy. That he
His
never
comeback
recorded.
album, kind of.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah, Suspicious Minds, the whole thing.
Is that good?
All right.
Oh, I'm excited then. All right. Is there anything on the record that you don't like?
On this, I even though I said that thing about I kind of agree with him. The Hippie Boy it's too talky, but I do like the gospel at the end. No, there wasn't anything like I hated. Yeah, there wasn't anything I hated on that album. I just
Dude, there's really not. It's super
just weird.
super digestible, dude. I'm telling you, man, I love when I get this kind of a record, man, and it's just one of those things where it's like the same way I felt about Big Star. When I got Big Star and I got Big Star, I was fucking in. And then, this other thing too, Wayne, is that, like, man, I've looked through, I was talking to Morty last night, and I was like going through the history of this podcast, the people we've had on. I mean, fuck, man, when we did Big Star, I think we did Radio City, their second record, which I think was First, if that's the name of it. We had Jody Stevenson on from the band.
right.
That's insane.
No, I love it. I like get better guests than me. Please.
No, God,
it
no.
up.
You're our
Keep it
backup.
up. Keep it up.
Emily keeps throwing another couple people on me to do our regular guests, and I'm like, come on, dude.
All right,
Like, it's
we'll see.
Wayne.
But this was a great. I mean the Kenny Wayne. That guy can shred like nobody's business.
Oh, he's
It's
awesome, dude.
insane. It's insane how effortlessly talented that guy is, and to hear that story of him one note of it at a time learning those records, because he could. I don't think he can read music, so it's incredible.
Yeah. God bless him, man.
Incredible. Thank you for having me on with him. I was really curious about.
I just did
He
so. I
plays-
turned the mic off for a second. All right. Can you fuck to this record, Wayne?
I mean, I can't, but yeah, but that has nothing to do with the record. I'm just too old now to. No, it's. I guess you could.
You can fuck to this. You can fuck to this.
I have not yet to this record, but who knows? Who knows?
Who knows? It could change. It could
Who knows?
change.
Who knows?
God, he
The
was
Burrito
really bad
Brothers.
but he was really bad at naming bands. The International Submarine Band,
Yeah, that was the name I
Flying-
couldn't get. Yeah, that was his first band.
Flying Brothers, the Flying Burrito Brothers. Yeah.
By the way, there's an original Burrito Brothers as well that went to New York. It's the whole thing is weird. That whole LA scene at the time. You know, a lot happened. By the way, just want to, as we finish this podcast, I want to shout out to one of the members of the Monkees as being part of the country rock fusion mashup that was going on in the mid to late 60s that Graham Parsons was spearheading. And that's Michael Nesmith. He did it in the Monkees, and he did it with his band right after the Monkees. He's
Morty is a big believer in getting them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the way that like the MC5 is getting in right now, but they weren't like voted in; they were added because I think enough people voted, but they still just didn't, you know. But it's funny too, Wayne. They're using a clip from my podcast in the award presentation.
What?
Kim Thale, who played with them when they went on that tour with Wayne Kramer, he said something. It was like they were bold, they were raw, they were rock, they were punk, they were the MC5, and they're like using that.
They were,
and
man.
then they cut out me being like, but can you fuck to it? All right, what would be your
elevator pitch? Here's my elevator pitch. If
What do
you've
you
never
got?
heard this is an obscure album that did not do well. I'm going to start off right now. How many more floors do we have in the elevator? Okay, we can still go. It's an obscure album that did not do well at the time, but one of the architects of this guy, Graham Parsons, became a legend because he died early, and later with all these songs were rediscovered. And if you want to know anything about how country music and rock and roll merged to create a whole new genre of music, start here with the Byrds and the Flying Burrito Brothers. You can't miss. It's a really interesting album, and learn about Graham Parsons, the fallen angel of this scene.